Hey readers, welcome back for another Read Aloud. Read Aloud 46. Today, kind of fun, kind of different. I've selected a chapter book, The Story of Diva and Flea. Today, you'll hear the first half of this book, written by Mo Willems and illustrated by Tony DiTerlizzi. It's kind of an interesting story about two unlikely friends, Diva and Flea. I hope you like their story. Not as much acting, this is more reading today, but I hope you'll tune in on Friday for the second half. The Story of Diva and Flea, as told by Mo Willems and shown by Tony DiTerlizzi. Les débuts. Chapter 1, Diva and Flea Then. This is Diva's story. For as long as she could remember, Diva lived at 11 Le Play in Paris, France. 11 Avenue Le Play was a grand old apartment building with a small gated courtyard in front. Many people lived in the building. Kids, parents, old ladies, even an artist or two. Like most grand old apartment buildings in Paris, there was a gardienne who lived on the ground floor. It was her job to make sure that everything inside and outside of the building was neat, tidy, and safe. Diva was the gardienne's dog, which meant that Diva was practically responsible for the whole of 11 Avenue Le Play, including the courtyard. It was a very big job for a very small dog. Diva took her job seriously. Every day, she would exit the grand front door, trot across the small courtyard, and stand at the building's front gate. From there, she watched and guarded and watched. And if anything ever happened, no matter how big or small, Diva would yelp and run away. Diva was very good at her job. This is Flea's story. For as long as he could remember, Flea also lived in Paris, France, but at no fixed address. Flea lived wherever he was, which usually was somewhere other than it had been the day before. Flea did not even have a fixed name. Some people called him Puss, or Midnight, or Richard, but he didn't care too much about what people called him. He liked the name Flea. He thought it was a funny name because he was a large cat, and a flea is a small animal. Also, he may or may not have had fleas. He was a flaneur. A flaneur is someone or some cat who wanders the streets and bridges and alleys of the city just to see what there is to see. A great flaneur has seen everything, but still looks for more, because there is always more to discover. Flea was a really great flaneur. Chapter 2, The Courtyard. One afternoon, Flea was having a particularly good time flaneuring. The day was barely half over, and he had already discovered a stairwell that led deep under the streets of Paris. There, giant rooms on wheels would suddenly appear and release large groups of people. So, thought Flea, that's where people come from. Later, Flea found himself sitting in the sun, watching people who were also sitting in the sun, watching even more people sitting in the sun. Everyone except for Flea was drinking tiny cups of something they called coffee. This is pretty much what people do in Paris, France. Then, inside Flea's favorite store, he saw a woman drop a giant piece of salami smack onto the floor. Flea pounced and snatched the salami before the man with the broom could even chase him out. An event that was both unusual and delicious. And if that weren't enough, that very same day, Flea happened to wander past the courtyard at 11th Avenue, Le Play, where he saw Diva for the first time. As soon as Flea saw the small dog, he was captivated. As soon as Diva saw the large cat, she yelped and ran away. Flea laughed because it was kind of funny. He had seen many funny things in his life, but he had never seen such a small dog yelp with such a loud voice. After that, Flea would make sure that most afternoons he just happened to flaneur right by the courtyard of 11th Avenue Le Play. It was fun watching the dog yelp and run away. This went on for many days. Flea would flaneur by, the small dog would yelp and run away. Flea would laugh. It was almost too good to be true. Then one day, Diva didn't yelp or run away. Instead, she looked right at Flea's big face and asked, "Are you trying to hurt my feelings?" Flea had never thought about it like that. Chapter 3, The Mouse. The next day, Diva trotted into the courtyard, expecting to see the large cat and to hear his loud laugh. But the cat was not there. It was quiet. Diva was surprised at how empty the courtyard felt without a cat sticking his big head through the gate. Then she noticed the courtyard wasn't completely empty. There was a small, dead mouse near the front step. Diva looked at the mouse and thought for a moment. Then she called out as loudly as she could, "Who left this mouse by my doorstep?" A small voice hiding in the bushes replied, "Me." It was Flea's voice. Diva was surprised a cat that big could have a voice that small. The cat came out from behind the bushes and walked to the edge of the gate. "I did not mean to hurt your feelings," he said, "so I brought you a mouse." "You brought me a mouse?" asked Diva. "To show you how sorry I am," he replied. Diva looked at the mouse and thought for a moment. Then she walked over to Flea and said, "That is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me. But in the future, bring me a small piece of ribbon, okay?" Flea laughed, and this time, so did Diva. Chapter 4, Feet. After Diva and Flea had shared their first laugh together, Diva invited Flea to visit her courtyard every day. Diva would stand by the gates as Flea told stories about the underground rooms on wheels, the people who drank coffee all day, the piece of salami and the broom that missed, and more of his many adventures. Diva had never thought about the world beyond her courtyard until she heard Flea's amazing stories. She especially liked the one about the tower so tall and so pointy that it could cut a cloud in half, like a knife slicing through a soft piece of delicious cheese. Diva loved cheese. For Diva, just inside her courtyard gate was the most wonderful place on earth for listening to Flea's stories. There, the sun warmed her fur, and his stories warmed her imagination. But then, as often as not, she would hear the ominous click-clacking of feet either entering or exiting the apartment building. Diva was a small dog, smaller than a person's foot. The way a foot tended to come crashing down from the sky made her aware of just how squishable she was. The fact that feet usually traveled in pairs did not help things one bit. As soon as she heard the telltale click-clacking, Diva would yell, "Feet!" and run away. After enough time had passed, Diva would slowly return to the courtyard. Then, Flea could resume his story. That is, until that telltale click-clacking returned. Diva couldn't help but yell, "Feet!" and run away again. It was who she was. "I like telling you stories," Flea told Diva with a smile, "but they sure take a long time to finish." Chapter 5, A Big Thought. One day, after he had finally told the story of the store where the man roasts whole chickens and could learn a thing or two about sharing, Flea said, "Well, time for me to go." "Where will you go when you go?" asked Diva curiously. "Where won't I go when I go where I go?" replied Flea proudly. "How am I supposed to know where you won't go when I don't know where you do go when you go?" asked Diva. By now, their little dog and big cat brains were very confused. Unsure of what to do next, Diva thought of yelling, "Feet!" and running away. But there were no feet anywhere to be seen. So Diva just stood there. "You should join me one day," Flea said. "You could be a flaneur like me." "What is a flaneur?" asked Diva, worried that it might be a type of mouse catcher. Flea explained that a flaneur is someone, or some cat, or maybe even some dog, who wanders the streets and bridges and alleys of the city just to see what there is to see. And a great flaneur has seen everything but still looks for more, because there is always more to discover. "I am a great flaneur," Flea said with his tail raised high. "That is how I discovered you." "But little dogs like me are not flaneurs," said Diva certainly. "There are always exceptions," replied Flea. "They are what make you exceptional." Diva thought about being a flaneur. Simply imagining the big buildings and the giant parks and the wide avenues and the tower that could cut a cloud in half made her shiver. The world was larger than she had thought possible, and it was all right there, on the other side of the courtyard gate. That was a big thought for a little dog. Chapter 6, A Big Step. Diva had spent the whole night thinking about the big thought from the day before. So in the morning, she was tired and impatient for Flea to arrive from his early flaneuring. "I have been thinking," said Diva, before Flea could poke his head through the courtyard gate. "I have been thinking about becoming a flaneur like you." "Excellent," purred Flea. "Let's go." "Now?" asked Diva. "A flaneur does not need a plan to have an adventure," said Flea. "A flaneur creates an adventure whenever the opportunity arises." "Oh," said Diva quietly. Even though she had spent the whole night thinking, she had not thought of that. "I can show you the giant tower that can cut a cloud in half," said Flea unexpectedly. "It is just around the corner." "Around the corner?" gulped Diva. She also hadn't thought she would have to travel that far. "Come on," said Flea, as he turned and dashed onto the sidewalk. Diva did not move. Flea looked at her from the middle of the sidewalk and smiled a nice smile. "Take a little step and see how it feels," he said. Even a little step felt like a big step to Diva. The sidewalk was large and different and very not courtyardy. But if Flea was there, and he was, then it couldn't be all that bad. So, slowly and carefully, Diva scrunched her nose and followed in Flea's paw steps. She passed through the courtyard gate for the first time ever, leaving behind the one place where she had lived her entire life. It took her many steps to reach Flea on the sidewalk, but eventually she did. "Isn't this fun?" asked Flea. Diva did not think it was fun, but it was exceptional.